What Officer Derek Pullman didn't know in that moment, what he couldn't have known as he approached that black Mercedes sedan with his hand resting on his service weapon, was that he was about to end his own career. Not with a bullet, not with a bribe, but with 23 words captured on dashcam that would cost the city $34,000 in settlement fees, trigger a federal civil rights investigation, and force the resignation of a 15-year veteran officer who'd accumulated 17 formal complaints in just 8 years on the force. The man he'd just ordered out of that vehicle wasn't a drug dealer, wasn't a car thief, wasn't running from anything. His name was Marcus Thompson, 52 years old, former Marine Corps captain, current police commissioner for the entire Metropolitan District, the man who literally signed Officer Pullman's performance reviews, the man who'd been reviewing Pullman's personnel file just 3 days earlier after yet another citizen complaint about excessive force during a traffic stop. And Marcus Thompson was about to miss his daughter's senior prom because a cop who'd been flagged for bias training 4 separate times couldn't imagine that a black man in a luxury vehicle might actually belong there. This is the story of how one traffic stop became a reckoning. How 37 minutes of dashcam footage exposed a pattern that supervisors had been quietly managing for nearly a decade. How a father in a tuxedo became the catalyst for policy changes that are still being implemented today. Because Officer Derek Pullman's career didn't just end that night, it detonated. Marcus Thompson had worn a uniform for 30 years, first in desert camouflage leading reconnaissance missions in Afghanistan, then in dress blues testifying before city council about community policing reforms. The tuxedo he wore that evening, custom-tailored, freshly pressed, was supposed to be his uniform for the proudest night of his daughter's life. Instead, it became evidence in a federal civil rights case. Instead of walking Jasmine into that prom venue at 7:30 p.m., he'd spend the next hour on the side of Riverside Boulevard, trying to explain to a police officer why he had the right to drive his own car in his own city. Before we continue, where are you watching from? This story went viral in 48 states, sparked protests in 6 cities, and changed traffic stop protocols in over 200 police departments nationwide. If stories about accountability and justice matter to you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment with your city, because what happened to Marcus Thompson could happen anywhere. So subscribe, share this, and let's get into it. April 27, 2019. Riverside Boulevard, a 6-lane arterial road that cuts through the heart of Montgomery Heights, separating old money from new money, inherited wealth from earned success. To the west, Victorian mansions with historical plaques and garden clubs. To the east, newer construction, townhomes and condos where young professionals and city employees were building equity for the first time. It was 6:38 p.m. on a Saturday. Golden hour. That specific slant of spring light that makes everything look softer, more forgiving. Traffic was light. The dinner rush hadn't started yet. Most families were inside getting ready for evening plans, little league games, church services, date nights. Marcus Thompson had driven this exact route hundreds of times. It was the most direct path from his home to the Riverside Grand Hotel, where Jasmine's senior prom was being held. The Mercedes was 3 years old, charcoal gray, purchased used after Marcus received his appointment as police commissioner. Nothing flashy, just a reliable sedan with good safety ratings and enough room in the back seat for his daughter's prom dress to hang without wrinkling. Jasmine sat in the passenger seat that evening, 17 years old, wearing a floor-length emerald gown that she'd saved for with money from her part-time job at the public library. Her hair was done, her makeup was perfect. Her boyfriend was waiting at the hotel with a corsage. She had 45 minutes to get there, take photos, and make the entrance she'd been planning since freshman year. She'd never make it. Because at 6:38 p.m., as Marcus signaled to change lanes near the intersection of Riverside and Oak Hill Drive, Officer Derek Pullman's patrol car pulled in behind them. No lights at first, just following. Close. Tailgating, actually. Less than 1 car length in a 45 mph zone. Marcus checked his speed. 42. Legal. Checked his mirrors. Turn signals working. Brake lights functioning. He'd just had the car inspected 2 weeks earlier. But none of that mattered. At 6:39 p.m., the lights came on. Red and blue strobing across the Mercedes' rear window, reflecting off Jasmine's face as she turned to her father with a question she shouldn't have had to ask. Dad, what did we do? Marcus Anthony Thompson was born in 1967 in South Memphis, Tennessee, the youngest of 3 boys raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse. His mother believed in 2 things absolutely: education and service. She told her sons that the world wouldn't hand them anything, but it couldn't take away what they earned. Marcus took that literally. He graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA and a full ROTC scholarship to Tennessee State University. He studied criminal justice while completing officer candidate training, graduating summa cum laude in 1989 with a commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. His military career spanned 14 years. He served 2 tours in the Gulf War, earning a Bronze Star for valor during a reconnaissance mission that extracted 12 wounded soldiers under enemy fire. He was promoted to captain in 1998 and spent his final 4 years teaching combat leadership at Quantico. When Marcus left active duty in 2003, he joined the Montgomery Heights Police Department as a patrol officer, taking a massive pay cut because he believed in community policing. He spent 6 years on patrol working night shifts while earning a master's degree in public administration. His thesis, Procedural Justice and Community Trust, a Framework for Reform, became required reading in the department's sergeant training program. In 2009, he was promoted to sergeant. In 2012, lieutenant. In 2015, captain. Each promotion came with questions. Was he being fast-tracked because he was good, or because the department needed to promote a black officer for optics? The answer was both. And Marcus used that as leverage. He pushed for body camera policies before they were mandated. He created the department's first bias training curriculum. He fought for a civilian review board with actual power. In 2017, at age 50, Marcus Thompson was appointed police commissioner, the youngest in the city's history, and the first black commissioner in 63 years. He implemented new use of force protocols, mandatory de-escalation training, and a data-driven early intervention system to flag officers showing patterns of complaints before they became lawsuits. That system had flagged Derek Pullman 4 times in 3 years. Marcus had reviewed Pullman's file personally just 72 hours before the traffic stop. 17 formal complaints since 2011. 12 dismissed. 3 sustained but resulting in only written reprimands. 2 still under investigation. The complaints followed a pattern. Traffic stops in affluent neighborhoods, confrontational language, accusations of profiling. Marcus had scheduled a meeting with Internal Affairs for the following Tuesday to discuss whether Pullman should be placed on administrative duty. He never got to that meeting. Because on April 27, 2019, Marcus wasn't police commissioner reviewing personnel files. He was just a dad trying to get his daughter to prom on time. Jasmine was his only child. Born in 2002 to Marcus and his wife Patricia, a high school English teacher. Jasmine volunteered at the homeless shelter. She tutored underclassmen. She'd been accepted to Howard University on a partial scholarship to study political science and pre-law. That day was supposed to be perfect. They'd left the house at 6:25 p.m. Jasmine's phone was buzzing with texts from friends already at the venue. They were laughing about some dad joke, some comment about curfews and chaperones. They were 7 minutes from the hotel when the lights came on, and everything changed. Derek Michael Pullman joined the Montgomery Heights Police Department in 2011 at age 26. He'd grown up in Grafton, a predominantly white suburb where his father ran a construction company. He'd played varsity football, graduated with a 2.7 GPA, and spent 2 years at community college before dropping out to attend the police academy. He graduated from the academy in 2011, ranked 17th in a class of 32. His evaluations described him as confident and assertive, words that can mean very different things depending on context. The complaints started in year 2. March 2013, a traffic stop involving a Hispanic man driving a work van. The man filed a complaint alleging that Pullman had demanded to see immigration papers despite having valid Tennessee identification. The complaint was dismissed after Pullman claimed he'd asked for additional identification. No dashcam footage existed. August 2013, a black woman alleged that Pullman had entered her apartment without permission during a noise complaint and made a comment about how she could afford such a nice TV. The complaint was sustained. Pullman received a written reprimand and 2 days of unpaid suspension. November 2013, another traffic stop. A black college student allegedly told his vehicle was stolen despite producing valid registration. The stop lasted 47 minutes. No citation issued. Complaint dismissed. The pattern continued. Year after year, stop after stop. By 2019, Derek Pullman had 17 complaints in 8 years. That's not bad luck. That's not a tough district. That's a pattern. And the department knew. Internal Affairs had flagged Pullman in 2015. He was required to complete bias training, a 2-day workshop on implicit bias and constitutional policing. He attended. He passed. The complaints continued. In 2018, after his 14th complaint, Pullman was reassigned from South District to East District, the wealthier, wider side of town. The reassignment wasn't punishment. It was framed as better utilizing his skill set. Translation: move the problem somewhere less visible. Pullman should have been more careful. He wasn't. Because on April 27, 2019, at 6:38 p.m., Derek Pullman saw a black man in a Mercedes driving through a neighborhood where Pullman believed black people didn't belong. He saw what he'd been trained, not by the academy, but by a lifetime of unchallenged assumptions, to see: a threat, an anomaly, a target. 17 complaints in 8 years, multiple reassignments, documented patterns. And Officer Pullman was still on patrol, still armed, still pulling people over. Do you think officers with sustained complaints should be placed on desk duty pending review? Drop your answer below. The dashcam activated automatically when Pullman's lights came on. It captured everything, every word, every gesture, every second that Marcus Thompson's life shifted from father to black man, proving his right to exist. The timestamp read 6:39:14 p.m. When Marcus put the Mercedes in park, turned off the engine, and placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10:02. Pullman approached with his hand resting on his service weapon. Not drawn, but resting there. A signal. License and registration. Now. Marcus responded calmly, reaching slowly into the glove compartment. Officer, I have them right here. Is there a problem? Pullman's jaw tightened. He leaned down, his flashlight scanning the interior, even though the sun was still visible. Don't play games with me. Step out of the vehicle. This is where confusion becomes suspicion, where a routine traffic stop becomes an interrogation. Sir, my daughter and I are on our way to her senior prom. Can you tell me why you pulled me over? I said step out. Hands where I can see them. Jasmine was crying now, quietly. The kind of crying that's trying not to be crying. Dad, what's happening? Marcus kept his voice even, controlled, the voice of a man who'd commanded Marines under fire. Stay in the car, sweetheart. Officer, I'm reaching for my wallet in my jacket pocket. I'm moving slowly. He opened the door and stepped out. He was wearing the tuxedo. Black jacket, satin lapels, bow tie perfectly straight. He looked like someone's father doing everything right. Pullman stepped back, his hand still on his weapon. You think you can just roll through this neighborhood like you own it? Whose car is this? It's mine. Here's my registration, my insurance, my license. Marcus held out the documents. Pullman snatched them, barely glancing at the license before his eyes went back to Marcus, then to the car, then to Jasmine. A Mercedes. In this part of town. At this hour. You expect me to believe that? This is where disbelief becomes accusation, where serving and protecting becomes guilty until proven innocent. Marcus took a breath. The breath of a man who'd dealt with this before. Believe what, exactly? Don't get smart with me. Pullman walked back to his patrol car. He ran Marcus's license through the system, a process that should take 90 seconds. He took 8 minutes. 8 minutes where Marcus stood on the side of Riverside Boulevard in a tuxedo while his daughter texted friends that she was going to be late. 8 minutes where other drivers slowed to watch, some filming on phones, some shaking their heads. At 6:47 p.m., Pullman returned. The license had come back clean. No warrants, no violations, not even a parking ticket. But clean records don't erase suspicion when suspicion is based on skin color. Where are you coming from? Home. We're heading to her prom at the Riverside Grand. Where do you work? I work for the city. Pullman's eyes narrowed. Doing what? I'm the police commissioner. The words hung in the air for 3 full seconds. The dashcam captured Pullman's face, the confusion, the disbelief, the slow realization. You're what? Police Commissioner. Marcus Thompson. You can verify that with dispatch if you'd like. This is where panic becomes defiance, where an officer realizes he's wrong but doubles down anyway. You could have told me that at the start. Marcus's voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath now. I shouldn't have needed to. I presented my license and registration. I answered your questions. I complied with every request. Now can you please tell me why you pulled me over? Pullman handed back the documents. You were following too closely, tailgating the vehicle in front of you. Officer, there was no vehicle in front of me. I was in the right lane. I signaled before changing lanes. You were behind me the entire time. I'm giving you a warning. You're free to go. A warning for what? For driving while black in Montgomery Heights? For having a daughter who wants to go to prom? For existing in a car you don't think I should be able to afford? Pullman's hand went back to his weapon. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. This is where reasonable questions become perceived threats. Jasmine opened the passenger door. Dad, please, let's just go. I don't want to be late. Her voice cracked. She was 17. This was supposed to be her night. Instead, she was watching her father get profiled by one of his own officers. Marcus looked at his daughter, then back at Pullman. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. We're leaving. Officer Pullman, I'll be in my office Monday morning. We'll continue this conversation then. He got back in the car, started the engine. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from fury suppressed, from dignity maintained under circumstances designed to strip it away. Pullman stood on the roadside, watching them drive away, and maybe he realized then what he'd done. Or maybe he told himself the story bad cops always tell, that he'd done nothing wrong, that Thompson was being sensitive, that pulling rank was unprofessional. But the dashcam didn't care about Pullman's story, it only recorded the truth. Marcus Thompson had done everything right, complied with every command, stayed calm, presented documentation, and he still had to prove he wasn't a criminal before being allowed to drive his daughter to prom. Do you think this stop would have happened if Marcus was white? Comment your honest answer. What Derek Pullman didn't know was that 2 other officers had been watching the entire stop from a patrol car 1 block east. Sergeant Jennifer Reyes and Officer Michael Chang had been monitoring traffic near the Riverside Grand Hotel because of the prom. They'd noticed Pullman's lights and pulled over to observe, standard protocol. They'd watched the entire interaction. They'd seen Pullman's body language, heard the tone, watched Marcus exit in a tuxedo with his hands visible and compliant. Sergeant Reyes had 14 years on the force. She'd worked with Marcus Thompson when he was a lieutenant. She'd attended his swearing-in ceremony, and she knew Derek Pullman's reputation. At 6:48 p.m., just as Marcus was getting back into his vehicle, Sergeant Reyes made a decision. She activated her own lights and pulled up behind Pullman's patrol car. The dashcam captured her approach. She walked past Marcus's Mercedes, nodded at him through the window, a gesture that said, "I see what's happening here," and went directly to Pullman. Officer Pullman. A word. Her voice was controlled, professional, authoritative. Pullman turned, surprised. "Sergeant, I handled it. He's free to go. Walk with me. Back to your vehicle. Now." They stood between the 2 patrol cars, out of Marcus's earshot but fully visible on both dashcams. "Do you know who that is?" "Yeah, he told me. Police Commissioner." "And did you have reasonable suspicion for this stop?" "He was driving erratically, following too close." Officer Chang checked the traffic camera footage. There was no vehicle in front of him for the entire 2 miles you were following him. Pullman fumbled. "He matches the description of a suspect we've been looking for. I was doing my job." "What description? What suspect?" "The auto theft ring. Black male, 40s, luxury vehicle. That bulletin was from 3 weeks ago. In a different district, for a different make and model. That's not reasonable suspicion. That's profiling." Sergeant Reyes took Pullman's notebook. "Where's your documentation for this stop?" Pullman hadn't written anything down. Because he'd expected Marcus to be someone who couldn't fight back, someone without resources or power. He'd expected it to be like the other 17 times. "Officer Pullman, return to your vehicle. Go back to the station, write your report, and pray that Commissioner Thompson doesn't file a formal complaint, because if he does, your personnel file speaks for itself." She walked over to Marcus's car, tapped on the window. Marcus lowered it. "Commissioner Thompson, I apologize on behalf of the department. You're free to go. Drive safely. And sir, for what it's worth, your daughter looks beautiful. Have a wonderful evening." It was 6:52 p.m. They were officially late. The grand entrance was over. The photos were taken. The night was changed, diminished, shadowed by something that should never have happened. Marcus nodded to Sergeant Reyes. He didn't smile. He didn't thank her. Because intervention after injustice isn't justice. It's damage control. He drove to the hotel. He walked Jasmine into the ballroom at 7:11 p.m. She joined her friends. She danced. She smiled. She pretended. But it wasn't perfect. Because now she knew what her father had always known, that credentials don't matter, that compliance doesn't guarantee safety, that being right doesn't prevent being targeted. She was 17 years old, and on the night she was supposed to feel like a princess, she learned what it means to be black in America. The dashcam footage hit the internet 47 hours after the traffic stop. Not from Marcus, not from the police department, but from a civilian who'd filmed part of the interaction and sent it to a local activist organization. They requested the official dashcam footage through open records laws and uploaded it with a caption that went viral. Police commissioner pulled over while taking daughter to prom. Watch till the end. The video had 3.2 million views in the first week. Local news picked it up Monday morning, national news by Tuesday. By Wednesday, it was on every morning show, every cable panel, every podcast about race and policing in America. Derek Pullman was placed on administrative leave on Monday, April 29th. The announcement came at 9:47 a.m. It was framed as routine protocol during internal reviews, but there was nothing routine about it. Internal Affairs launched a comprehensive review of every traffic stop Pullman had conducted in 8 years. They pulled dashcam footage for all 17 complaints. They re-interviewed complainants. They subpoenaed his personal text messages and social media accounts. What they found was a pattern that went beyond negligence into ideology. Text messages where Pullman referred to certain neighborhoods as jungle territory. Facebook posts where he'd shared memes about thugs and welfare queens. Group chats where he'd mocked bias training as political correctness bullshit. On May 14, 2019, 17 days after the traffic stop, the Montgomery Heights City Council held an emergency public hearing. Marcus Thompson testified. So did 7 other people, all black, all pulled over by Derek Pullman, all dismissed when they'd complained. The hearing lasted 4 hours. It was broadcast live. It trended on Twitter for 6 straight days. On May 22nd, the department announced that Officer Derek Pullman's employment had been terminated effective immediately for violations of departmental conduct standards. The termination letter included this paragraph. Officer Pullman's actions on April 27, 2019, represent not an isolated incident, but a culmination of patterns documented over 8 years. His decision to initiate a traffic stop without reasonable suspicion demonstrates a fundamental inability to serve the public with integrity. This termination is final and not subject to appeal. But termination wasn't the end. Marcus Thompson filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, not for the money, but for the record, for the precedent. The lawsuit alleged racial profiling, unlawful detention, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Fourth Amendment protections. The city settled 8 months later for $34,000. Of that amount, $14,000 went to Marcus. $100,000 went to Jasmine in a college trust fund, and $100,000 was directed to a community fund for legal support for residents who'd experienced police misconduct. The settlement included a consent decree requiring mandatory bias training, early intervention systems with teeth, and a civilian oversight board with subpoena power. Derek Pullman appealed the termination through the police union. The appeal was denied. He filed for unemployment benefits. Denied. He applied to police departments in 3 neighboring counties. All 3 rejected him after background checks. His career in law enforcement was over, not because of one bad stop, but because that stop exposed a pattern that should have ended his career years earlier. A $34,000 settlement. Termination. No other department would hire him. But is that enough? Should officers like Pullman face criminal charges for civil rights violations? Drop your answer below. Marcus Thompson spoke at the City Council hearing on May 14, 2019. His testimony lasted 11 minutes. Here's what he said, from the official transcript. I want to be very clear about what happened on April 27th. This wasn't about a traffic violation. This was about Officer Derek Pullman seeing a black man in a car he didn't think I should be driving, in a neighborhood he didn't think I should be in. I've worn a uniform for 30 years. I've served this country in combat. I've served this city in every rank from patrol officer to commissioner. I know what reasonable suspicion looks like. And I know what racial profiling feels like. What happened to me happens to black men every single day in this city. The only difference is, I had the power to fight back. Most people don't. The 17 complaints in Officer Pullman's file represent 17 times someone tried to tell you there was a problem. 17 times the system failed to listen. And because you failed to act, on April 27th, my daughter sat in a car crying while her father was treated like a criminal. Jasmine was supposed to remember that night as magical. Instead, she'll remember fear. She'll remember humiliation. Officer Pullman's career is over. That's consequence. The city is paying $34,000. That's accountability. But what changes now? What prevents the next Derek Pullman from accumulating 17 complaints while supervisors look the other way? We need mandatory body cameras with footage that can't be deleted. We need civilian oversight with subpoena authority. We need early intervention systems that actually intervene. We need to end qualified immunity for officers who violate constitutional rights. Because if we don't fix the system that allowed Officer Pullman to keep his badge after complaint number 5, after complaint number 10, if we don't fix that system, then we're just waiting for the next viral video, the next settlement, the next family destroyed. My daughter wants to be a civil rights attorney. After April 27th, she knows exactly why that work matters. Because accountability that only comes after public outrage isn't accountability, it's damage control. The chamber was silent when Marcus finished. Jasmine testified too, reading from a prepared statement. I'm 17. I should be thinking about college. Instead, I'm thinking about whether I'll ever feel safe in a car with my dad again. I'm thinking about the fear I saw in his eyes when Officer Pullman's hand went to his gun. I don't hate police officers. My dad is law enforcement. But I hate what happened to us, and I hate that it keeps happening to families who can't fight back. She was crying by the end. The cameras captured it. The image ran in newspapers across the country. A girl in an emerald dress learning that America isn't what she thought it was. Jasmine Thompson was 17 when she learned that her father's rank couldn't protect him from racism. She testified at a city council hearing. Do you think minors should have to testify in civil rights cases, or should the system protect them from that burden? Comment below. Derek Pullman wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom. 17 complaints over 8 years, 4 reassignments, multiple sustained violations, and he kept his badge until he finally profiled someone with power. But what about the 16 people before Marcus Thompson? What about the complaints that were dismissed because the person couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't take time off work, couldn't risk retaliation? What about the pattern that everyone saw but no one stopped? Systems protect themselves. Police departments close ranks. Unions defend the indefensible. Internal affairs investigations clear 94% of complaints nationwide, not because 94% are false, but because the system is designed to protect officers first and citizens second. That's not conspiracy theory. That's documented fact. The Department of Justice has investigated dozens of police departments for patterns of civil rights violations. The findings are consistent. Complaint systems that discourage reporting, investigations that favor officers, discipline that's toothless even when violations are sustained. Derek Pullman should have been fired after complaint number 5, should have been placed on desk duty after complaint number 8, but he wasn't, because the system valued stability over accountability, because admitting systemic failure meant admitting liability, because it's easier to settle lawsuits quietly than to fire problem officers publicly, until the dashcam footage went viral and the public demanded answers. That's how change happens in America. Not through quiet policy memos, but through public outrage so loud that institutions have no choice but to respond. Marcus Thompson's traffic stop became a catalyst. The reforms that followed, mandatory body cameras, civilian oversight with subpoena power, early intervention systems, those reforms didn't happen because the department developed a conscience. They happened because a police commissioner got profiled and had the platform to make it matter. But that's the tragedy. That reform required someone with power to experience what powerless people experience every day. That 17 complaints weren't enough, but one viral video was. The real question is, what changes now? Derek Pullman is gone. The lawsuit is settled. The reforms are implemented on paper. But are they followed? Are officers held accountable? Are bad cops fired before they accumulate 17 complaints? Or are we just waiting for the next viral video? Because if we don't demand ongoing accountability, if we don't stay angry, stay vocal, stay engaged past the news cycle, then Marcus Thompson's story becomes just another headline, and Derek Pullman becomes just another officer who got caught, not an example of a pattern that got dismantled. We need sustained pressure. We need community oversight that doesn't disappear when cameras leave. We need voters who hold elected officials accountable. We need citizens who file complaints, who show up at hearings, who demand transparency. And we need good cops to stop protecting bad cops. To break the code of silence. To understand that defending Derek Pullman doesn't protect the profession, it destroys trust. Because accountability isn't anti-cop, it's pro-community, it's pro-justice. When bad cops face consequences, good cops benefit. When complaints are taken seriously, community trust increases. When reform actually happens, policing becomes safer for everyone. Marcus Thompson understood that. That's why he didn't just sue. That's why he testified. That's why he pushed for systemic reform instead of just personal compensation. Derek Pullman lost his job. Marcus Thompson got $34,000. Jasmine Thompson got a college fund and a traumatic memory. But the work isn't done. Because somewhere in America, right now, another officer is pulling over another family. Another complaint is being filed that might be dismissed. Another pattern is developing that might not be stopped, and we have a choice. We can scroll past it, feel momentary outrage and move on. Or we can stay engaged, demand transparency, support reform, hold institutions accountable not just when videos go viral, but every day. Marcus Thompson did everything right. And it almost didn't matter. Jasmine Thompson did nothing wrong, and she still carries the trauma. Derek Pullman did everything wrong. And for 8 years, the system protected him. That's not justice. That's institutional failure. So here's my question. What are you going to do about it? Subscribe if you want more stories about justice and accountability. Hit the notification bell. Comment below with your thoughts. And remember, the dashcam is always recording. The question is whether we're watching and whether we're willing to do the work that justice requires. Thanks for watching. Before you go, do you think the reforms implemented after this case are enough, or does your police department need to adopt these policies too? Comment your city and whether your local PD has civilian oversight with real power. And if you found this valuable, share it, because silence protects systems that need to change.